Good morning and welcome to Conversations from the Gap. Usually hosted by myself, Melinda and Chloe, but today you just get me. So usually Chloe and I try to stick to 30 minutes. I generally put on a timer on my phone for 30 minutes. And yeah, when it goes off, we try and stop talking. We usually go for another few minutes. When we created the podcast, that was a very conscious decision in time management, both for us and for our listeners. Just to keep the message, I suppose, potent and, concise, and it was a time decision for us so that we could keep the podcast sustainable, and also because we want people to listen. And if we're going to ramble for hours, people probably may get a bit sick of our voices. So I haven't put a timer on today because I'm by myself, and I kind of think if it gets a bit awkward or a bit cringe with me just chatting away here, I'll just wrap it up because I don't want it to be awkward for anybody. So when I was chatting to Chloe on Saturday about me just recording by myself, we kind of decided that I would have a chat about cycles. So cycles in business. So Chloe, for the next couple of weeks, is amazingly flat out with her business. In her studio, she's got shoots. And it just didn't work just with the flow of her business at the moment to be able to record. Because although we do try and keep it to 30 minutes, Chloe and I can chat for hours, and we usually do. So we usually spend a couple of hours chatting. So we'll do the podcast, but then we might chat for half an hour before, half an hour after. And it takes time. So we agreed that I would just have a chat on here today about the flow and the cycle of our businesses. So last week's episode, I was having a chat about how I'm very much in a kind of winter period, I suppose, of my business. So I've got my projects, I've got the podcast, I'm doing some writing. But in all honesty, I haven't had paying clients. And on the opposite side of that, Chloe is flat out. And I think we were talking, and it's a beautiful example of, everything for a woman is about cycles. And we try and flow through those cycles. And it would be easy for me at the moment to be in a real panic because I actually don't have paying clients. However, with my Women Over 40 photo project, and the podcast, and I'm also doing some writing, I'm still learning. I'm still moving. I'm still showing up. And the beautiful thing about, I feel, where I am at the moment is that it is a deep place of reflection, of choosing to show up, of really taking notice of what I'm curious about and why do I want to do it. And, I'm doing things for free at the moment, but how does that contribute to my business? How does that, offer another facet of what I'm also creating? So, with the Women Over 40 project, it's deeply creating beautiful relationships with the women that I'm working with the women that I'm taking photos of. You know, with the podcast, it's putting voice to things that I'm passionate about. The banter between Chloe and I, and the conversations that we have are very honest, very open. There's kind of no gatekeeping, obviously. And that also is definitely a refinement space for my business. And it also is just that verbal processing and banter with another creative woman, which I'm passionate about, which my mentoring sessions are very much that, having a chat, sharing stories, sharing knowledge, and digging deeper into what we're curious about and what is important to us. And all of that, it builds on the confidence in myself in showing up, because confidence comes from actually taking action. Like, it's fine, you know, I do a lot of writing and a lot of journaling, and I'm always kind of putting things down on paper of, this is what I want, this is what I wish for, this is what I love. And that's great. And it's a nice thing to come back to, obviously, because that's how I created Remember from 19 years of my journals. And when I was writing in those journals, there was no thought of a book. It was me showing up. It was me putting my thoughts and my heart and literally everything down on paper. And then it was that beautiful flow of something being created. And it's being open to that experience, I suppose, of showing up with no expectation except, what am I curious about? What do I need to process? What do I want? What don't I want? And working with that in your creative process. And so that feels very much like the space I'm in at the moment of, I'm just being curious. I'm showing up. I'm putting in the work that I love. And then with the love of that, waiting to see what happens. It's not even waiting, but understanding that if something more is supposed to come out of it, it will. Because that's what happened with Remember. So with Remember, I had journaled for years and years. And then on the 8th of July, 2021, I woke up with, I've never felt the energy to create like I did on that day. So I woke up and I knew I had to be in my office. I knew I had to be at my desk. I knew I had to get all of my journals out. I didn't know why. I just knew that day would be spent writing. And when I say writing, it was more, it was this feeling of searching. So I had all my journals and I was reading through them and skimming through them, and it was, I was searching for something, and, you know, I would read a page or a paragraph, and the words that came out onto the page of Remember were nothing like the words that were on the page of my journals. It was like they alchemized into the beautiful message or the quote that ended up in Remember. And it was a complete state of flow. There was, when you sort of overthink things and in that creative process and you overthink and you can stop and you start and it feels a bit gross. This was nothing like that. I've never experienced anything so, I keep saying in flow, but it really was. It was just flowing out of me. I suppose channeled. It was, and the whole process of creating Remember was like that. So I spent this day just frantically, manically going through all these old journals and diaries and scraps of paper and pages in like, sketchbooks and I have words everywhere. Yeah, the words were just flowing into this Word document. And I never, ever, ever had an intention of creating a book or like creating anything with my journals. And so I had no expectation. And then when I'd sort of written out most of the book, the whole process just flowed. I found the graphic design, the book designer, who, knew that's her business. So, she had the printers and it flowed. The whole process, it truly was perfect. The marketing of it, I wasn't nervous about marketing it. I wasn't nervous about talking about it. I was excited. I wanted people to know about the process. I wanted people to know about the book. For example, I think I had maybe 300 followers on Instagram. And when I was printing the book, I had to print a minimum of 250 copies. So when I started talking about the book, and I did a few stories on where I was at, what I was doing, the process, and I sent it to like a pre-sale. I did a pre-sale so that I could afford to print the book, and I sold, it was like 195 or 96 copies in the pre-sale. And I had 300 followers on Instagram. And in saying that, not every copy went to someone on Instagram. There was definitely people in my real life that bought copies, and but majority of the copies went international. So they went all over the world. And when I received her and when I was sending her out, it was such a process of, it was so lovely to know the women that the book was going to. Like, I don't know them personally. A lot of the women I had followed on Instagram, or they'd followed me. And then there was obviously some people that I've never met, but every book was signed, and I loved the process of putting them in the envelope, going to the post office, because I have such a beautiful post office lady. And even she was excited to know like where the books were going, and just knowing where she was going to be in the world. And that this beautiful book had come from me showing up. And it wasn't even consistently. Sometimes I wouldn't write for 6 months. Sometimes I wouldn't write for a year. But it was that I devoted to that space when I did show up. And I suppose, like, when I was talking to Chloe about, or when we were talking about me doing this, I was thinking it would be really easy for me not to do this podcast this week. I could have easily put a post up on Instagram and said, we're not doing it, or not said anything at all. I mean, it probably would have gone completely unnoticed if we wouldn't have done a podcast this week. But that's the thing with showing up and pushing your own boundaries. Like, I was really nervous about doing this by myself, because I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Because the banter between Chloe and I is so easygoing, and the conversations, they lead on to one another, and there's just, sometimes I have to hold myself back from getting over enthusiastic and interrupting and being like, yes, like, and also this or also that. And so I was worried about doing this one on my own, because I was like, what? I don't want it to be awkward. I don't want it to be silent, even though with the platform we use, I can edit the silent, pauses out, but then that makes it really choppy. So the message of today, we usually have a message or a theme that we talk about. So I suppose today it's just don't make an excuse not to show up. Show up, see what happens. Your confidence comes from taking action. And if your heart and soul call you into that action, then trust in yourself that is meant for you. Like, I was a bit nervous about doing today, but I was also more curious of what will it look like? What will what will it be? How will I be in that conversation by myself? And it's easy to make excuses, and it's easy to rely on others, because this is a podcast for Chloe and I. And for us, in the businesses that we do have, there will be times when it's really busy and there'll be times when it's really not busy. And I'm so thrilled and so happy for Chloe that this time is really busy for her. And it's a beautiful thing of she has she shows up every day. She puts in the work. She's devoted to her art. She's devoted to her business. And when it seemingly isn't working or isn't moving as fast as we would like, there is still magic happening in the background. And that is proven by the next couple of weeks of Chloe being so flat out with her work, with her art, with her studio, that then I get the opportunity to follow in her lead and continue to show up and continue to be curious with what I'm creating and continue to, create a podcast that is of value for me in stepping outside of my comfort zone, in building that confidence of understanding what my voice is. And hopefully it being of extreme value to the women that listen. And it can be awkward, but also the awkward makes it interesting, and the awkward gives personality, it gives authenticity, and it's like sometimes I'm just thinking of awkward situations. So sometimes, like, I love street photography. I love, love, love street photography. But I feel so awkward doing it. Like, I feel like I'm breaching people's privacy. I feel like I'm being a bit weird and a bit definitely awkward. But I just love it. Like, I love how true and honest it is. I love how much personality and the colors, and I love it. And the few times that I have tried it, I've been surprised by the results. And so I try and keep that in mind when situations like this come up, of just do the awkward, just be awkward, have a go. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the expert. But by having a go and pushing your own comfort zones and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, we do become the expert in ourselves and what we create. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And it does make it really unique to us in what we create and how we create it. Because it's really easy, really, really easy to sit and watch and have that kind of, oh, I wish I could do that. Or I wish I had the confidence to do that. Or I wish I had the guts or the heart to do that. And it's all just one step at a time. Like, it's one awkward step at a time. And even when Chloe and I did start this podcast, we were a bit like that. We were like, just take it one step at a time, one conversation at a time, and see what happens. And we're having a great time with it. And it's not highly polished. We don't always stick to our 30 minutes. Sometimes it goes way over. But it's a beautiful creation of conversation, women connecting. We get great messages in our DMs of people that appreciate the conversations that we have, the honesty that we're able to just speak about and expand on. And it's just one step at a time. And that's why this episode's kind of exciting, because it's like embracing that flow of where we all are in what we're creating. And it's still showing up. It's cheering on and being so happy and so proud of where another woman is in her business, that she couldn't be here today, but then, like, she's so potently created all that she's creating, her business, her podcast, her studio. And it's this beautiful ecosystem of being curious, creating what you love, taking one step at a time, and just seeing what amazing, interesting, fabulous things are created from us being us. I think it's really beautiful, and it's important. And I could go off on a tangent of, we've really lost that ideas and the thoughts and the process of working with our cycles, and understanding that there will be really busy times, there will be really quiet times, there will be times of rest and play and work, and it's very easy to get caught up in the hustle and the comparison of social media, or seeing what other people are doing around us and feeling like we're failing. But then if we reframe that into, what is my version of success? What do I want? And if we can make ourselves proud at the end of the day that we have taken one step even towards what our version of success is, then we're on the path to creating our success. And like, there's a page in my book that is quite controversial each time I share it, and it is, you are the most important person in your life. And it's controversial because people are like, well, I don't know about that. I've got my kids and I got my husband, I got my job, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but if we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't nourish ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually, creatively, financially, we're not there to support anybody else. We aren't going to be able to sustain all that we want to do if we don't take care of ourselves first. And it's not just the art or the photo or the painting or the writing that we create. We create life. We create a home. We create a marriage. We create motherhood. We create a meal. We create conversation. And that is the beautiful thing about creativity. Like, when we are creating our photos or our writing or our paintings or whatever, all of the facets of the woman that we are contribute to that work of art. So the conversation that you had with your kid in the car on the way to school, and then you go do a motherhood session, those feelings of love and joy and just that experience of you as a mother translates into your art. And it's the same with writing. When I was writing in my journals, like I said, I had no intention of ever writing a book, but writing for me is very therapeutic. I let it all out. I know that no one else is going to see it, so I can just breathe and write. And so to read back on those words years later and for them to alchemize into the beautiful words in Remember and the messages and the quotes and the reminders is a really special thing. And it really did cement to me just this thing I always say about our art, life, and business is how we create it, because every choice is ours. So to show up is our choice. To not show up is our choice. To really embrace the downtimes and explore that is our choice. And I've got to 30 minutes. I can't believe I got to 30 minutes. I seriously thought I would get to 10 minutes. So that's 30 minutes. I'm not going to go over. The message is, be awkward, be you, show up. It doesn't, the consistency is your choice. Like I said, sometimes I haven't written for 12 months, but when I do, it's like with all of me. And I flow between writing and photography. So, and they give me different things. And that's the flow of being a woman and being in cycle. And yeah, I could go on about it. I could go on and on about it. If you would like to talk more about it, I do have mentoring sessions available. So does Chloe. We can both be found on our websites and obviously Instagram. You can email us. You can send us a DM. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my ramble and my awkward conversation. I'm very proud that I did it. I'm very proud that I showed up and had a chat. I'm going to go through and edit it now and see how awkward it was. All right. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.